Most dentists aren't trained to run businesses, let alone scale them. This is the TechDental podcast for dental leaders who want more than just tips. We give you systems, strategies, and straight answers. I'm Dr. Randeep, and each week I sit down with the operators, AI founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders who are reshaping what's possible in dentistry. If you want a smarter, scalable, future-proof practice, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome back to the TechDental podcast, where we explore the intersection of AI, strategy, and leadership. Today's conversation is one I've really been looking forward to because we're diving deep into how clarity, character, and AI can scale an organization without breaking its culture. My guest today is Alexander Michael Gittens, global strategist, researcher, and thought leader whose work has created billions in value across 400 businesses worldwide. He bridges two worlds, corporate strategy and machine learning, and his research on trustworthy AI might just be the missing piece in how DSOs and practices think about technology and valuation. Alexander, you've advised organizations across continents, from Fortune 500s to fast-growing health tech firms. Let's start with your story. How did your journey from global strategy to AI research begin?
Yeah, and Randeep, thanks a lot for having me. It's a great place to start. So, as a consultant, as a strategist, I went through the life cycle that maybe every consultant goes through, where you're working 70, 80 hours a week, and then your wisdom is going up, but your energy is going down. And you're saying, how can I get these outsized returns that I want while still taking care of my mental health, my physical health, my emotional health? And that's when we started looking at AI as a way to get our bandwidth under control, but also scale up our best decision-making, even when things were a little bit more tangential or lower priority. And that sort of led us to some pretty cool outcomes, but it mostly came from a very human situation where, hey, energy's going down, wisdom's going up. How do we make sure that we're most effective given that reality?
Awesome. And you've delivered billions in business value. What separates scalable from fragile organizations?
Oh, that's a great question. I had a wonderful conversation the other day with a fractional COO. And even though I consider myself on the strategy side and he is on the operations side, Randeep, it was wonderful how he's seeing the exact same things. It is clarity around the specific roles, clarity about how that role affects the goals of the organization, managing and monitoring those specific outcomes, and making sure everyone's on the same page. And it's super simple to say, but the larger your company gets and the more complex it gets, the more people get tripped up by that phenomena.
And the idea of clarity feels critical because as we enter the AI era, it's not just automation, but the automation can amplify chaos instead of solving it. AI is transforming dentistry, and from X-ray diagnostics to revenue cycle automation. But you've warned that it's not the algorithms that fail, it's the habits and shortcuts around them. What does trustworthy AI really mean for dental leaders rolling out these systems in their organizations?
It's a great question. Randeep, I think of it like when someone gets a lot of money. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but here in North America, the stats are 75% of lottery winners, they go broke after winning the lottery. And the way I like to think about it is money has a way of revealing your character, and it does a horrible job of building your character. In fact, failure is better at building your character if you get back up. So think of it this way. When you start to use AI, it reveals and exposes the gaps in your operations. And if you haven't bridged those gaps and if you haven't closed those problems, then you end up with more confusion at scale. And so the important thing is understanding the specific outcomes that are necessary at every point. And then you ask yourself, is this something that we can do? And if we can do it, can it be delegated? And if it's delegated, can it be automated? But until you have a situation where you can actually break down the steps of all of your operations into individual actions, AI might be the curse rather than a blessing because your systems aren't where they need to be. And that's the first part of your question. But go back to the second part of your question, because I want to make sure I give you a specific answer when it comes to dentistry. Because I actually have a friend in the gym, and she just bought a dental practice a few years ago. And I'm just fascinated by her transition to owning the company, having people that are retiring, bringing on new hygienists, and upgrading to a more AI central system. Let me make sure I got the second part of your question correct here.
Yeah, so the second part of the question really was around when you have dental organizations and they want to implement AI systems, how will they implement this in a way that maintains that robustness and safety first,
Yes.
human in the loop aspect? Because there's a lot of interest around AI. Dental leaders, they want to incorporate it, but they also have some concerns around guardrails, safety. So if you could touch a little bit about how that would impact a dental organization, please.
Absolutely. So you said the key word, human in the loop. And there's another loop, it's the feedback loop. So I recently created something for our organization called I-AMG. So stick with me here, Randeep. Everyone calls me AMG, and I created a digital twin, and the name is very uncreative. The name is I-AMG. And I-AMG, he's just not a friendly guy. Like, he pokes holes in everything. He is just, he's so difficult to work with. But the reason I created him is because his job is, after we're ready to deliver something, to poke holes in everything we have. So it's a feedback loop. So let's put these two ideas together. We've got the human in the loop and we've got the feedback loop. And so the human in the loop is something that Walt Whitman talked about. He said, be curious, not judgmental. The human in the loop is curious. So now we've used AI to speed a process. We've used AI to break down perhaps x-rays, or to look at client onboarding, or to look at the way we schedule our hygienists, or anything like that. All good uses of AI. But now the human in the loop looks at the output and they say, does this make sense? I've been running this dental business for so long. Does this make sense? But Randeep, the key here is to be curious and say, why would that be the case? How would that be the case? Would it work? And then the human in the loop allows you to make changes at critical vertices as you move forward. Now, the feedback loop, that's the I-AMG that we created. I-AMG scores everything we do against the best of everything we've done. So what we did was we fed 600 client projects. And by the way, in order to keep our AI from crashing out, we had to create 5 levels of GPTs that all do different systems. So it took a little bit of work, but we got it there. But what happens is the I-AMG character, this individual, compares our outcomes with the best we've ever done before, and it scores it. It scores it for how precise is it technically? How much does this sound like us? How much is this the best we've ever done? So Randeep, the way I like to think about it is there's a line in Julius Caesar where Julius Caesar says, men are flesh and blood and apprehensive. And it means we all get tired, right? We all crash out. We all have bad moments. But I'm asking the feedback loop to take the best that we've ever done and just compare it with this output. Like, how does this compare to us at our best? Then we go back to the human in the loop. And so we're making the AI stronger with the human in the loop, and we're forcing ourselves towards excellence by using that feedback loop.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I've got to meet this I-AMG.
Yes. You don't want to meet him.
Sounds like an interesting character.
He's contrarian. Oh, he sounds like a Charles Dickens character. He's contrarian. He's curmudgeonly. Yeah, he's quite a guy.
And I'm going to call you AMG from now on, if you don't mind.
Everyone does. Everyone does.
Awesome. AMG, you've coined a term that every operations leader should know: the clarity gap. The idea that undocumented workflows and memory-based rituals silently destroy ROI. How would that play out inside a large DSO or a group dental service organization with multiple sites? And if you were advising such a group on rolling out any kind of automation, what's the first practical step to close that clarity gap?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, we actually went as far as to trademark clarity gap, because after working with hundreds of companies, you would think it would be the quality of their strategy. You would think it would be the quality of their marketing. No, most leaders are pretty good at those things. What happens is there's fundamental misalignments in 3 areas: their market that they're pursuing, the product that they're selling, or in our case, the services that they're providing, and the messaging that they're using. So what we wanted to come up with is a quantitative and qualitative way to score how this company is best maximizing the market, the product, the services, and the messaging. And what that makes you do, it makes you look at every individual act your business takes, and it makes you map that specifically to an outcome that pushes your business forward. Let me give you an example. So you can look at your dental practice as we have a team of hygienists, we have an office administrator, we've got one or maybe two dentists that are in practice, and then we have a marketing guy we hired who does, I don't know what, offers free teeth whitening, and we get people in the door. You can look at it that way. The question that we would ask is, what does this organism, so the dental practice is an organism, what does this organism need to thrive? And then instead of looking at the office manager as an office manager, and the dentist as practitioners, and the marketing guy as a marketing guy or gal, we now ask, how does their incremental actions give this organism what it needs to thrive? And like any organism, whether you have a kid at home or you have a pet you're responsible for, there are certain things that make its well-being optimized. So now we don't want to look at these people as positions in a company. We want to look at the responsibilities. What are they responsible for, and how does that optimize this organization as an organism? So now we're starting to say, okay, we need to get certain number of people in the door that have a sustainable practice that grows. Now, when we get them in the door, what is considered a great lead for us? What's considered a bad lead for us? What are the people who help us grow our practice? They're sustainable. What are the people who they cause administrative drag? Then with our follow-up, is the office manager calling people before their appointments? Is that linked to sales or marketing? Like Randeep, you look through everything and you ask yourself, how does this individual action create value in this organism? Now, here's where clarity gets even more beautiful. So now we got the technical stuff. We've now said, hey, this is what the organism needs to be successful, and this is what each person or process is responsible for in making that happen. Now we wrap that whole thing in customer value. We say, how does everything we do align with creating the most values for customers? So we already know what we're going to do. Now this shapes how we're going to do it. And when you get to the point where because when you're a dentist and you're also a business person, you're wearing two hats, but you want to think about it, just like we said, as you're being curious about the process. And you're asking yourself, how does everything we do actually link back to the outcomes that we want? Once you have that, you can use AI to make that process a lot quicker because it's optimizing what you have. One thing I want to add, because as dental practices get bigger, this happens, is we want to know why every specific mandate or practice was put into place. So if we have a form that needs to be filled out and we fill it out every time, obviously we want to optimize that, but we want to make it digital. But we also want to say who created this, when did they create it, and why did they create it? So this form was created by Jyoti because she knows that this form is necessary to submit documentation to NHS. That would be a very good reason. But then every time we fill it out, we can look at that reason and see if it needs to be updated. When you look at things that way, Randeep, you start to have a system that is repeatable. You have where you can copy and paste it because you can go from Reading to Manchester to Liverpool to Surrey. Like you can take that same system and replace it. And the way I like to talk about it to dentists that are perhaps new at scaling their practice, I like to talk about it like a McDonald's. So think of McDonald's. Don't worry about if they're healthy or unhealthy. Just look at them as a business unit. They are able to install a McDonald's in a location, maybe even before the government is installed, because their system is so good that pimply-faced teenagers can run it without giving us all E. coli or anything like that. So you want to have a system that is so tight and it's so well mapped that you can Control-C, Control-V, and just copy and paste it. But it all starts with asking yourself, what is necessary for this organism to thrive, and who or what process is responsible for that? Once you have that, you can optimize and you can duplicate it from there.
Awesome. I think what I love here is that clarity isn't a tech issue, it's a leadership discipline. And that really connects perfectly to our next theme here, equity. So private equity doesn't just buy profit, it buys culture. And you've said that the unimportant decisions, the small daily acts of character directly impact EBITDA. Let's unpack that slightly. So how do the daily micro decisions inside practices compound into real valuation outcomes?
Yeah, it's something I'm deeply passionate about. My MBA is actually in finance, but my thought leadership is rather qualitative. but it's the amalgamation of the qualitative and the qualitative where things are really interesting. So Randeep, in order for you to get private equity, in order for someone to invest in you, in order for someone to back you, in order for someone to take their resources and bet them on you, there's a fundamental human thing that's happening that goes right back to our amygdala. It goes right back to our reptilian brain. And that is trust. There is nothing more important than trust in a business. And we can think of trust as Stephen M.R. Covey does. He says it's made of two things. I'm going to add something to his equation. He said it's made up of competency and it's made up of character. So what we want to have is a situation where we are really good at what we do and we do things the right way, even when people aren't watching. And then the thing I'm going to add to Covey, and this is Stephen M.R. Covey, the son, not the dad. The dad is, he wrote the famous book. But I'm going to add to Stephen M.R. Covey's equation, consistency. So trust is built with consistency of character and consistency of competency. So what happens now when private equity comes along and they're looking at the way your business functions and they're listening to you talk about your business and they're talking to people and doing due diligence? What kind of provider is Randeep? I invest in him, because at that point, they're investing in you just as much as you are the business. And what happens is when they can look at your systems and your operations and the way you live your life and the way you lead, and they can see that consistency of character, everything you do the right thing. Every person they talk to talks about how you went the extra mile to make things right. That goes back to trust, which is the fundamental elixir in any great relationship. Then the second thing is when you show competency, when they can look at your business, and even though they may not be in the dental space, they can understand it because it has a familiarity to it of a well-run system. That goes right back to trust as well. So what happens is they are borrowing the trust of the way you operated in the past and the way you set up your systems before they can establish their own trust with you. I'll say it a different way. They don't know you, but when they look at the way you lead and they look at the way your operation is run, they can see your patterns of behavior over time. And that's all trust is. That's why you know your mother or your best friend better than they know themselves, because you've seen their patterns of behavior over time. So a simple test that we talk about at our company, Rupert Rodney, we say, we want to treat every individual action like it's the only thing our legacy is based on. And someone might say, AMG, that's too high. That's too high a level. But then answer yourself this question. If you can't maintain that standard, then why are you doing anything in the first place? Are we just trying to make a lot of money, or do we want a great reputation and to serve people and have a great business? We need excellence. So we want to remove anything that we can't give our all to. And we want to have a business where it's tighter, it's better, it runs on trust, competency, and character. And when you have those things, investment becomes so much easier than trying to convince people of who you don't appear to be through your behavior.
I love that. I'm a great believer in focus. I think there's a lot to be said for if you focus down and trying to really niche down and hit those focus points, it goes a long way. And I think when you link values to valuation like that, it reframes leadership really from a soft skill into a financial strategy, I would say. Digital change always meets human resistance across generations in dentistry. You've said AI doesn't replace people, it exposes culture. Why do you think some teams thrive through transformation while others resist it?
Yeah, it's a great question. Existentially, we can answer it, but let's answer it more practically. Humans have a natural resistance to change. It's true. I saw this comic strip where there were 100 people in a room. There was one person standing at the front of the room, and the first little square said, "Who wants change?" And in the next square, everyone had their hand up, right? 100 people. And then the next frame, it said, "Who wants to lead the change?" And maybe only 10% of the room in the next square had their hand up. Then the last one said, "Who wants to lead? Who wants to change? Who wants to change themselves?" And the next square, the room was empty, right? And so we all want change, but we're not willing to change ourselves. So the key thing to making these changes and making them stick is to align it with outcomes that we all agree on, right? So if it's just me as the owner of this dental practice, I just want to make more money. I'm going to overwork my hygienists. I'm going to have them on days where they don't want to come into work or it doesn't work for them or they need to pick up their kids. I am going to run this thing like a machine because profit is all that matters. then everyone's going to be reluctant to those changes, obviously. But if the first AI system you integrate is something where it says, hey, look, when do you work at your best? When do you feel what works best for you? Do you have daycare on Mondays and Wednesdays and you have, what works best? Let's put all of your schedules in and let's find out a way that we can get you in here at the best time for you. And then what we'll do is every other month, one person will be inconvenienced, but they'll know it ahead of time. That's the first system we're going to implement. One where the change aligns with something you already want, right? Because everyone wants change, they just don't want to change. And so then you're building a culture of what? That big T word we talked about, trust. Because every time Rundeep comes and he has something new that he's working on, it actually increases the value for everyone, for ourselves, for our clients, and for the business. And if you don't have that synergy between those three things, then why would your business thrive if you're exposing or exploiting employees, if you're not creating great outcomes for your clientele, and if the business isn't profitable? So it's really just about keeping the main thing, right? And by making change a part of the fabric and the culture of the business, by first asking what change actually provides value for all of those three parties.
Awesome. Goes back to the clarity concept. And
clarity, man, I tell you, man, my heart beats a little faster because we've realized that's all it is. If it's all it is, clarity. If you can show someone with clarity where they are, what the problem is, where they want to go, and you can position your solutions as the bridge between where they are and where they want to go, you can do that in 90 seconds. You'll be successful with investors. You'll be successful with your business. It's all about being able to say the problem better than they can say it themselves. Talk about where they want to go in a way that they couldn't even say it, and then positioning yourself as the bridge between those two things. That's all of sales in 30 seconds.
I love it. I love that. And that brings us nicely to mindset, the human engine behind every strategy. You often quote Viktor Frankl, everything can be taken from a person except the freedom to choose their attitude. When was a moment that philosophy truly got tested for you?
Yeah, that book came along at the right time. I've always been a reader, but let me take you through like how I got here. I'm downtown Toronto and my parents are immigrants. And when they came to Canada, they were like any other immigrant struggling. They didn't have a lot of money. But then my dad got sick and we went from being in an okay position to a very scary financial position. And I remember as a kid, I must have been about 7 years old, Rundeep, and I was like, look, when I get older, I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to take care of everyone and all of that. We lived in some pretty bad neighborhoods. And so when I went away to college, I did make a lot of money, but I made it the wrong way. So before long, I had legal issues. I owed all this money. I had business issues. And I didn't just have to start all over. I had to rebuild my reputation. I had to rebuild my business. And in that moment, I was reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And he said that quote that you said, that he calls it the last of the human freedoms, that freedom to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. And Rundeep, we can all feel like place things of circumstance. We can all feel like external things, our family, the environment, the economy, the NHS. We can feel like all of these things are working against us. But when we realize that we have the freedom to choose the way that we react, then we can very confidently say life is 10% of what happens and 90% of the way that I respond to it. And if I respond in alignment with my values and I'm willing to do hard things where I'm likely to fail, then as long as I get back up, I'm heading in the right direction. So those words became so important to me because it gave me control and agency over my life. And what happens when you speak to someone who uses these two words, my fault, the situation I'm in is my fault? It gives you a certain amount of control and perspective that it really turns you into the best version of yourself. Because if it's someone else's fault, then that's not your enemy, that's your master, right? If it's your circumstances, then you're a victim. But if it's your fault, you're like, look, this is where I am in life, and it's up to me to decide how I'm doing moving forward. Man, and that from that perspective, you can really do some wonderful things. So thanks for mentioning that book. You really did your research. Very good that you see that how important that is to who I became. And a lot of the confidence I have is built on knowing that I am the compound interest of my moment by moment actions. It's that simple.
Yeah, I love the philosophy. And I think it's something that all of our listeners can really take away and use in their business and their daily
Sure.
lives as well. And AMG, what legacy do you want your work to leave on the next generation of leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. The word legacy has meant so many different things to me over the years. But let me turn the question back to you, because even when we were doing our pre-interview, I saw that we have so many synergies in the way that we think and the way that we operate. But you are in such a different world, coming from dentistry, then going to tech. And you're doing such a great job of bridging these worlds so that ambitious, forward-looking dentists or even investors can see the massive opportunity in this area. So let me turn the question back to you, because I know that legacy is something that we've talked about. And I promise you I'll give you an answer, but I'm curious how you think about that.
I think for me, it's about creating impact in what you do. So yes, everybody wants to create a business, successful, it needs to make money. But I think if your sole purpose is that, it's very limited. I think you need to start with what impact do you want beyond yourself? So whatever work you do, whatever tech you produce, it should really impact people's lives for the better, for their businesses, for their personal lives. And it should make it easier for them to then scale, grow their businesses. And in turn, what does that do? It gives them time, which they can then better spend with their loved ones, with their family. So for me, it's a knock-on effect. For me, it's what can I do? It's like throwing a pebble into a pond and you have a ripple effect. If you can create that ripple effect and you can touch as many people as possible with a piece of tech or a business or a philosophy or a bit of a mindset that you give to somebody, I think that's what it is for me. So it's beyond, I think for me, business, entrepreneurship, it goes beyond functional, that you're doing something for a reason, to create a product, a service, to sell it, to earn money. Yes, of course, that's the rudimentary part of it. But for me, I like to use the analogy of the pebble and the ripples. If you can do something which creates that ripple effect and you have that impact, then I believe that will give you the energy to keep going, because it's tough. It's tough you have to do it daily, and there's so many ups and downs. And the only way you get through that is by knowing deep down that you're going to achieve something way bigger than yourself. And it's going to have an effect not just on you, but on the people you meet and on their loved ones. So that hopefully that answers. That's
Beautiful.
my kind of that's my philosophy behind business and entrepreneurship. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to transfer value from yourself to the world.
It's a beautiful answer. And I have a question, because I've thought about this a lot, and it's a massive, massive part of my thought leadership. But life is busier than ever. If you look at the statistics about the cost of living, wages, the cost of raising a child, like if you don't laugh, you'll cry. This is literally impossible. I was telling my best friend the other day, I said, being a good parent's impossible. Being a great parent, oh my God, don't even think about it. It's just too many demands on your time. Everything is too expensive. The activities are just amazing. But the question that I have is, how do you then look at the busyness of life, the imperatives of running a business, running a family, and still keep this somewhat nebulous idea of purpose front of mind? I have an answer, but I'm curious how you think about that. How do we, in all of this whirlwind, which is modern life, keep purpose as the concentric circle around everything we do?
I think, again, it comes down to what you said about clarity. It's really, I like to go back to first principles thinking and strip everything back. Even if you have a very complicated situation, you've got a business with lots of moving parts, deep down, there's a core reason why you started to pursue that in the first place, or why you want to pursue that. And it goes down to your core values and the purpose that it gives you. So people do things because it gives them meaning and purpose in their life. And I think if you start and strip everything back and just start from that core, that what impact do you want to have? And again, it goes back to clarity. It goes back to clarity. If you start something with confusion and chaos, like with AI, it scales the chaos. It's a multiplier.
Yes.
So I like to always go back to the very basics and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I trying to pursue this? So it comes back down to clarity. And then once you have that, Once you have that clear purpose and you know why you're doing something, things tend to work themselves out. Yes, you have to work hard, but you find that you will tend to attract those types of people and circumstances in your life, and you will filter out a lot. The mind is a great filter. And I think
Yes.
this is where AI, yes, AI is powerful and it will be able to take over many functions. But I think this fundamental filtering process of the brain to really provide razor sharp context and clarity, I think that's always going to be a human
Yes.
function. And that's something that we should really actually explore and also elevate. And that's something, and I'm glad that's something that tech probably will never be able to take away.
Oh, it's a beautiful answer. For our listeners, I'm gonna give 3 of the equations that we use, because for life being so analog and so crazy and so up and down, sometimes it's helpful to be able to analyze what you're doing in real time. And these ideas come from some Eastern philosophy. So Confucius said that there's 3 ways that we can get wisdom: through experience, which is the bitterest; through imitation, which is the easiest; and through reflection, which is the noblest. And you'll see how these ideas kind of leverage reflection to give us the best outcome. Okay, so here's the first equation. The first equation is, who do I want to be? What do I want in life? Why do I exist? And we came up with something called BPM multiplied by BPI. It's actually my license plate here in Ontario. It's my license plate, BPM x BPI. So BPM is best possible me. And we multiply that by the biggest positive impact. So if we break it down even further, the best possible me is my talents, my passions, my values, my character traits, my skills, my choices. And the biggest positive impact is for myself first, the people I love, and then the world around me. And if I'm only out there doing things for other people and trying to create an impact, but I'm ignoring my values, my passions, the things that make me, we've got a 0 on one side of the equation, so the whole thing equals 0. So we always want to be operating where we are amplifying and we are multiplying the best of who we are and creating that impact. Now, here's the thing. When does that happen? Does that happen annually? Does it happen monthly? It happens moment by moment. So when we're on this podcast, we could talk about tips and tricks to get you investment fast. Or we could talk about how do you get the compound interest that gives you the life you really want? Because in this moment, we're using that equation, the best me and the biggest impact. And then if you think about it, if you mess up, like I do all the time, I have a fight with my sister. I stopped listening because I was trying to get my point across. Then, like Confucius says, I can now reflect and I can say, was that the best version of me to create an impact? Then I can call her back and be like, sister, I got to apologize. I still think I'm right, by the way, but making you feel disrespected or not heard is a bridge too far. I will not do that. And that's the most important thing to me. Because the reflection period happens instantly and continuously, we're applying that equation moment by moment. So that equation, again, is the best possible me multiplied by the biggest positive impact. So now we've got Confucius talking about how to get wisdom through reflection, and we've got our equation for greatness and for legacy. Now, we had to add to it, Rundeep, because we had some really smart clients that were like, then how do I know what to do? You're saying I should do this in every moment. Of course, yes. At school, in your family, at your workplace, at your place of worship, when you're in traffic and it's not going anywhere, you should do this. But how do I know what to do? What's the best thing for me to do? So we came up with another equation. Do we have time for another equation? Let me know. He said, thumbs up, we've got time. Okay, so this one we had to ask ourselves, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Because we want to have one equation and one unknown so we can solve for it. And why goes back to what we just talked about. We are doing things to create the biggest positive impact, being the best version of ourselves. That's something we've already decided. That's what we want to be. Then we have to ask ourselves, okay, we know why we're doing things to create the biggest impact through the truth of who we are, but then how are we going to do things? So I just decided, I'm like, you know what, Rundeep? If I do something, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to do it as if my entire legacy was being judged on this moment. Rundeep, I'm telling you, take the transcript of this podcast and play it at my funeral. That's how I want to live every moment. So now we've got why, we've got what, we've got how, and the last thing we're left with is what. What am I going to do? And the best way to think of what is, if you are going to give things your all and do things with legacy in mind And if you're going to become the best version of yourself and create an impact, you can't say yes to 100 things. It's just, you can't. So now I have to be ultra careful what I say yes to. If Randeep calls and says, hey, are you willing to do a podcast? I look at my values. Is this something that's going to create value and legacy? Is this using my unique talents? Is this going to be something that the compound interest will be a life worth living? And it is, and so I say yes. And then it doesn't matter if the business was falling apart in the morning. If I've got 7 client meetings coming up later today, I give my all in this moment because I've said yes to something that fits my desire to have legacy, profit, purpose, income, and impact. So that's the equation I would say if you want to be a responsible person who has a life of profit and purpose. Why are you doing it? Because I want to be the best version of myself and create the most incredible outcomes. How are you going to do it? I'm going to give things my all. Then be careful what you say yes to. Because when you say yes to something, I want you to give it your all. And that'll give us permission to say no to, hey, can you be the MC for this fundraiser? I would love to say yes, but I prefer to put this energy into my family because if I can't give it my all, I won't say it. So now you're a steward of your time and you're a person who's in control of your legacy.
Awesome. AMG, that was powerful. We've got strategy, AI, and humanity all in one frame. For our listeners, if you're leading a DSO, scaling a practice, or just curious about how to build clarity into chaos, then this episode really is your blueprint. AMG, where can our listeners connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. So our company's called Rupert Rodney. And you can find that, just Google Rupert Rodney or Google me, Alexander Michael Gittens. But if you're super curious about those ideas about greatness and legacy and profit and purpose, we've got a 1-hour video essay called Higher Profit. So if you go online or go on YouTube and you put Rupert Rodney Higher Profit, you'll get to see a 1-hour presentation of all these ideas. And Randeep, even I come back to this presentation every 6 months or every year to remind me to stay grounded. That'd be a great place to start. And if it's anything business related, find me online, find Randeep online. But I'd say start with Higher Profit. It is literally, we took the time to crystallize and to elevate these ideas so they're digestible for very passionate leaders who want profit and purpose.
Awesome. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, follow, share, and subscribe. It helps more dental leaders discover the insights shaping the future of our profession. I'm Dr. Randeep, and this has been the TechDental podcast, exploring the intersection of dentistry, AI, and intelligent business thinking. Until next time, keep innovating, keep learning, and keep leading with clarity. AMG, thank you.
Pleasure was mine, Randeep.
Scaling a business isn't a dream, it's a decision. This is the TechDental podcast. And if you found value today, follow, share, and subscribe. This is the edge every dental leader needs.